My child, why these tears? Why this sorrow? Tell me, don't keep it to yourself. We must share it. Swift-footed Achilles sighed heavily and said, You know, and since you know, why should I tell you the whole story? We went to Thebes, Aeton's sacred town, sacked it, and brought back all the plunder. The sons of the Greeks shared it out amongst themselves in the proper way and chose fair-cheeked Chryseis for Agamemnon. Then Chryses, priest of the archer god Apollo, came to the ships of the bronze-armored Greeks to recover his captured daughter. He brought with him an immense ransom and carried the emblems of the archer god Apollo on a golden staff in his hands. He spoke in supplication to the whole Greek army and most of all its two commanders, Agamemnon and Menelaus, the sons of Atreus. Then all the other Greeks shouted in agreement. They wanted to see the priest respected and the splendid ransom taken. But this was not at all to Agamemnon's liking. He cruelly dismissed the priest. So the old man went back in anger, but Apollo listened to his prayers. The priest was very dear to him, and launched his deadly arrows at the Greek army. The men fell thick and fast, since the god's arrows rained down on every part of the broad Greek camp. At last a prophet who understood the god's will explained the matter to us. I was the first to rise and advise them to appease the god. This made Agamemnon furious. He leapt to his feet and threatened me, and now he's carried out his threats. The dark-eyed Greeks are taking Chryseis to Chryse in a swift ship with offerings for the god, while Agamemnon's heralds have taken the girl Briseis from my tent, whom the army gave to me. So now, if you have any power, protect your son. Go to Olympus, and if anything you've ever said or done has warmed the heart of Zeus, remind him of it as you supplicate him. For instance, in my father's house, I often heard you proudly telling us how you alone among the gods once saved Zeus, who darkens the clouds, from a terrible disaster when some of the other Olympians, Hera, Poseidon, and Pallas Athena, had plotted to throw him in chains. You, goddess, went and had him released. You immediately summoned to high Olympus that monster with 100 arms. The gods call him Briareus, but mankind, Aegeon, a giant more powerful even than his father. He took up his position beside Zeus, son of Cronos, exulting in his glory, and the blessed god slunk off in terror, leaving Zeus free. Sit by him now. Take him by the knee and remind him of that. Persuade him, if you can, to help the Trojans and to fling the Greeks back to their ships. Pen them hard against the sea and massacre them. That would teach them the true measure of their leader. Make wide-ruling Agamemnon, son of Atreus, realize the delusion he is under in giving no respect to the best of all the Greeks. Thetis replied in tears, my son, cursed in my childbearing, was it for this I nursed you? If only you could have been left to pass your days without tears or trouble beside the ships, since destiny has given you so short a life, no time at all. As it is, you are not only doomed to an early death, but also to a most miserable life, to a cruel fate that I have brought you into this world. Nevertheless, I will go to snow-capped Olympus to tell all of this myself to Zeus, who delights in thunder, and I will see whether I can move him. Meanwhile, stay by your swift ships, keep up your anger against the Greeks, and take no part in the fighting. Though I must tell you that yesterday Zeus left for the ocean to join the matchless Ethiopians at a feast, and all the gods went with him. But in 12 days' time he will be back on Olympus, and then I shall go to his bronze-floored palace, where I will fall on my knees at his feet. I am convinced he will do what I ask." With these words she departed, and left Achilles there, anger mounting in his heart at the treatment of his well-girdled woman Briseis, whom they had taken from him against his will. Meanwhile, Odysseus and his crew reached Chryse with the sacred offerings. When they had brought their ship into the waters of the deep-bayed port, they gathered up their sails and stowed them in the black ship's hold. They quickly slackened the forestays, dropped the mast into its crutch, and rowed the ship into her moorings. Then they threw out the anchor stones from the prow into the sea, tied up the stern hawsers on land, and disembarked onto the beach. The cattle for the archer god Apollo were led out of the ship, and Chryseis stepped ashore from the seafaring vessel. Quick-thinking Odysseus then led the girl to the altar, gave her back into her father's arms, and said, "Chryses, Agamemnon, lord of men, has ordered me to bring you your daughter, and to make a sacred offering of oxen to Apollo on the Greeks' behalf, in the hope of pacifying the god who has been inflicting sorrow and mourning on our men." With these words he handed the girl over into the arms of her father, who joyfully welcomed his beloved child. The sacred offering of oxen to do honor to the god was quickly set in place around the well-built altar. The men rinsed their hands and took up the sacrificial grains. Then Chryses lifted up his hands and prayed aloud. Hear me, Apollo, Lord of the Silver Bow, protector of Chryse and holy Cilia, mighty ruler over Tenedos. You heard me when I prayed to you before. You showed your respect for me and struck a great blow at the Greek army. Now grant me a second wish and lift this loathsome plague from the Greeks. So he spoke in prayer, and Phoebus Apollo heard him. When they had made their prayers and thrown the grain over the victims, they first drew back the animals' heads, slit their throats, and skinned them. Then, for the god's portion, they cut out the thigh bones, wrapped them in folds of fat, and laid raw meat for the rest of the animal above them. These pieces the old priest burnt on wooden spits while he poured libations of red wine over them, and the young men gathered round him with 5-pronged forks in their hands. Once they had burned the bones and tasted the organs, they then carved the rest into small pieces, pierced them with skewers, roasted them carefully, and pulled them from the flames. When their work was done and the meal prepared, they feasted, and no one went without a fair share. Their hunger and thirst satisfied, the young men filled the mixing bowls to the brim with wine and went around the whole company, pouring some into each cup for a libation to the god. And for the rest of the day the young Greek warriors sang and danced to appease the god with a beautiful hymn celebrating the archer Apollo, to which he listened with delight. Now, a common theme in the Iliad and the Odyssey that you're going to start seeing is feasting. This activity was an integral part of Bronze Age life. We see evidence of this in many Linear B tablets recovered at Bronze Age sites. We even see evidence of this within the palaces themselves, many of which have whole rooms dedicated to feastware like cups and bowls, and whole rooms dedicated to wine. Oh, it's done. You see, feasting was more than just the elite flexing on everyone else. It was more about building relationships. Many holidays that we celebrate nowadays have elements that they share in common with Bronze Age feasting, specifically the gathering of people with the sharing of food and drink. Oftentimes our holidays center around families and friends getting together to eat and drink, and that's not so far off from the Bronze Age feasts as well. In the Bronze Age, rulers and their palaces would hold feasts to establish relationships not only with their own townspeople, but also people from nearby towns. A theme you'll see coming up in the Iliad and the Odyssey is that of Xenia, and Xenia, coupled with feasting, plays a very important role in establishing Bronze Age relationships between individuals, groups, and towns. When the Greeks returned Chryseis to her father, they not only feast, but they also dance and drink. It's a big celebration in order to establish a relationship. Granted, that relationship was to stop the plague, but it was forming relationships nonetheless. So this is an interesting aspect of Bronze Age life that we get to look in upon in the Iliad, and one that has been proven to be true to form with the archaeological record. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to have a small feast of my own with my good friends in the other room. When the sun set and darkness fell, they lay down to sleep by the hawsers of their ship. But when early-born, rosy-fingered dawn appeared, they set sail for the broad Greek camp, taking advantage of a favorable breeze the archer god had sent them. They put up their masts and spread the white sail. The wind filled its belly, and a dark blue wave foamed up at the bow, sang out loud and strong as the ship made way, skimming the whitecaps, cutting towards her goal. So they returned to the broad Greek camp, where they dragged the black ship high up onto the sandy shore and kept it upright with wooden props. That done, they dispersed each to their own ship and shelter. But he raged on, grimly camped by his vast fleet, the royal son of Peleus, the swift runner Achilles. He had not only kept away from fighting, but had attended no meetings of the assembly where men win glory. He stayed where he was, eating his heart out and longing for the sound and fury of battle. 11 days went by, and at dawn on the 12th, the everlasting gods returned in full strength to Olympus, with Zeus at their head. Thetis, remembering her son's instructions, emerged in the morning from the waves of the sea, rose into the broad sky, and reached Olympus. She found far thundering Zeus sitting away from the rest of the gods at the highest of Olympus's many peaks. She sank down in front of him, put her left arm around his knees, took his chin in her right hand, and in supplication spoke to Lord Zeus, son of Kronos. Father Zeus, if ever I have served you well among the gods by word or deed, grant me this wish. Give honor to my son. He is already singled out for an early death, and now Agamemnon, Lord of Men, has dishonored him. He took his prize, removed her in person, and now he has her for himself. But you, do him honor. Olympian Zeus, who is wise in counsel, grant the Trojans victory after victory, till the Greeks pay my dear son back, building higher the honor he deserves. So she spoke, and Zeus, who marshals the clouds, made no reply. He sat in silence for a long time, with Thetis clinging to his knees as she had done throughout. Then she asked once more, "Promise me, and bow your head in agreement, or deny me outright, since you have nothing to fear. Then I shall know for sure that I am the most dishonored goddess of them all." Angered by this, Zeus, who marshals the clouds, replied, "You're going to get me in trouble with my wife Hera. Even now as things are, she harasses me constantly before the other gods and accuses me of helping the Trojans in this war. So leave me now, or Hera may notice us, and I will see the matter through. But first, to reassure you, I will bow my head in agreement, and the immortals recognize no surer guarantee from me than that. When I seal a promise with a nod, there can be no failure to fulfill it, no going back, no deception." The son of Cronos spoke and nodded his sable brows. The divine locks rolled forward from the Lord God's immortal head, and great Olympus shook. The agreement was made, and the two now parted. Thetis plunged down from glittering Olympus into the salt sea depths, while Zeus departed for his own palace. There the whole company of gods rose from their seats in their father's presence. There was no one that dared to keep his seat as he approached. They all stood up as he came in. So Zeus sat down on his throne, and Hera had seen and knew that he and silver-footed Thetis, daughter of the old man of the sea, had hatched a plot between them. At once she spoke to Zeus with cutting words. "Which god has been hatching plots with you this time, you deceiver? How like you it is to wait till my back is turned and then cook up some secret schemes on your own. You've never been willing to confide in me." The father of men and gods replied to her, "Hera, stop hoping to fathom all my thoughts. You'd find the knowledge hard to bear, although you are my wife. What is right for you to hear, no man or god will know of it before you do. But when I choose to take a step without conferring with the gods, don't cross-examine me about it." Ox-eyed Lady Hera replied, "Dread son of Cronos, what are you suggesting now? Surely it was never my way to pester you with questions. You're at liberty to make whatever decisions you like. But now I have a terrible fear you have been talked round by silver-footed Thetis, daughter of the old man of the sea. She sat with you this morning and took you by the knees. This makes me think you're giving her your word to honor Achilles and let the Greeks be slaughtered in their multitudes by their ships." Zeus, who marshals the clouds, replied and said, "Simply maddening, you and your suspicions. I can never escape you, but tell me, Hera, just what can you do about all this?" "Nothing. Only estrange yourself from me a little more, and all the worse for you. If things are as you say, you should take it that my will is being done. Now sit down, be quiet, and obey me, or all the gods on Olympus will be of no help when I lay my unconquerable hands upon you." So he spoke, and ox-eyed Lady Hera was afraid, and, restraining her feelings, sat down in silence. The sky gods in Zeus's palace were filled with fear, till at last the great craftsman Hephaestus, who sided with his mother, white-armed Hera, began to address them. "This is going to be a disaster, and we are not going to put up with you two squabbling over mere mortals and setting the gods at each other. It will be impossible to enjoy a good feast with so much fighting in the air. Mother, you know well what is best. Make your peace with my dear father Zeus, or he may spoil our feast. If he wanted to, the Olympian lord of the lightning flash, our superior by far, could blast us all from our seats. No, Mother, deal with him tactfully, and the Olympian will be gracious to us again." So he spoke, hurried forward with a two-handed cup, put it in his mother's hands, and said, "Mother, be patient and swallow your resentment, or, much as I love you, I may see you thrashed here in front of me. A distressing sight for me, but I will be unable to do anything to help you. The Olympian is a hard god to resist. Why, once before when I was trying to save you, he seized me by the foot and hurled me from the threshold of Olympus. I flew all day, and, as the sun sank, I fell, all the life knocked out of me, on Lemnos, where I was picked up and looked after by the Sintians." So he spoke, and the goddess, white-armed Hera, smiled, and took the cup from her son, still smiling. Then Hephaestus went on to serve the rest in turn, beginning from the left, with sweet nectar which he drew from the mixing bowl, and a fit of helpless laughter seized the blessed gods as they watched him bustling up and down the hall. So the feast went on all day till sundown. No one went short of the pleasures of food or music. Apollo played his magnificent lyre, and the muses sang, voices answering glorious voices. But when the bright lamp of the sun had set, they all went home to bed in the separate houses that the famous lame god Hephaestus, with his supreme skill, had built for them. Olympian Zeus, lord of the lightning flash, retired to the bed where he usually rested when sweet sleep overcame him. There he went up and slept, with Hera of the golden throne beside him. Stay tuned for Book 2 of the Iliad coming soon, and with that, I'll see you next time.